Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve King, representative in the U.S. House from Iowa, Western Iowa. Mr. King is on the House Judiciary Committee and vice chairman of the House Immigration Policy and Enforcement Committee, and has been involved in the immigration issue for many years, again looking for solutions to the problem of illegal immigration. Mr. King.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you organizing this. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate sitting on the panel with the people that are on the front lines, and including my own constituent here, Dan, who is one of the members of the front lines. I wanted to first address the subject matter and the nation of immigrants. Yes, we are. And often it's used to guilt us into walking away from enforcement of the rule of law. Excuse me. Some time back, I was sitting in Germany with German policymakers, and I said, "What's your policy towards the indigenous people in Germany?" And they looked at each other and they said, "We are the indigenous people." And, well then, why is your language a derivative of Latin? The Roman walls are there in Germany. They're sure that country is a nation of immigrants. And if you look around the world, what's the hardest argument to make? Maybe Japan, as not being a nation of immigrants, isolated island with a homogeneous population, but rooted back in two different language forms that come, they believe, from two different areas of Polynesian islands that had drifted over there and established a foundation in Japan. So look around the world. Every nation is a nation of immigrants. And we should be very proud that we're the only nation of immigrants where you can actually become an American or become the nationality of the host country. You can go anywhere in the world and try to become a Dutch or a Norwegian, but you can never become Dutch or Norwegian, but you can become an American. And so we should be proud of that, and we should lay down these parameters of why are 50 million people lined up in their home countries to get into the United States legally. 50 million people in all the lines for all the visa categories all together, and it's because we're the unchallenged greatest nation in the world. It's because of the pillars of American exceptionalism, including the rule of law. And that, I think, is the core of what we're talking about here, is how we preserve, protect, and now in this case, because of the erosion of rule of law, we have to expand the rule of law and back into the immigration policy. And that's where you all put on the uniform every day and put your lives on the line every day for the rule of law. And I grew up in a law enforcement family where they made certain that I respected that in all the forms that possibly could be explained to me. So I would say this, that whatever our hearts say, and then this specious argument about how there's work that Americans won't do, that's always been baloney. You've never been able to find a single job in the country that wasn't being done by Americans. And in fact, I've asked my staff, and they're not as enthusiastic as I am, go around with a video camera and let's do a video of Americans doing work that Americans won't do. You don't have to go very far. Right outside the walls of this building, you can get a video of the work of Americans doing work that Americans won't do, and you can go all across this country and do that. So that's another false and specious argument. But it isn't just the workforce, which, by the way, when you look at the data, today we have 14 million unemployed in this country. And we are bringing in, if you look back over the 10 years prior to the 2008 downward spiral, and do the data, the jobs created by an economy that was functioning and working and growing were 100% consumed by the legal immigrants that we brought into this country. Almost job for job, legal immigrants coming in took the new jobs created by a growing economy. Now we've got a declining economy. We haven't even raised the subject matter of what we do about the overflow of legal immigrants coming into America that are creating more and more people that are of working age that presumably have skills that are not in the workforce. For example, if you go to the Department of Labor's website and you look at the data there, Americans not in the workforce, and you have to add them up in the categories by age because they don't give you the total, but it comes to this. For the first time in the history of this country, when you add 14 million unemployed to the numbers of those Americans of working age who are simply not in the workforce, retired homemakers on welfare, for example, or maybe working in the black market, that number about 3 months ago surpassed 100 million Americans of working age simply not in the workforce. Now, when you think about that, 100 million, if we had to mobilize this country and we needed to do 100% mobilization like, say, we did in World War II, we've got 100 million American workers that we could tap to put into the workforce. You can't convince me that we have to import that labor in order to supply that. And so then we look at our southern border and we think, well, most of this is a benign population that flows across here. Well, it's not. It increases the unemployment in this country. It increases those people that are on one or more of our 72 different means-tested welfare programs. That suppresses our economy, and more people that are working, the people that are working have to work harder and longer in order to carry the load for those who not. Remember that no work, no eat? That's in the New Testament, and that was John Smith establishing the settlement on this continent. And so we need more people pulling on the oars and less people up in the steerage asking for somebody to come and serve them. But even if all of that could be scrubbed away, and even if it was okay to have 100 million people that are not pulling on the oars, and even if we really needed to stop off at this island and load on some more people to pull on our oars, we still have the drug wars, where the DEA will tell you that 80 to 90% of the illegal drugs consumed in America come from or through Mexico. And that is a huge problem. I can't get DEA to give me a number on what that cost is to the U.S. economy, let alone our U.S. society and pain and suffering. But Fox News reported it's a $40 billion a year industry. Now, I don't know where they got that number, but if they got it from the DEA, then the DEA is holding out on me because they won't give me the number. $40 billion, 80 to 90% of the illegal drugs, probably pretty close to 100% of the 40 or more thousand deaths in Mexico that we just heard about related to that drug market. So I'll suggest that the first and most important thing we need to do is operational control of the border, seal the border. Yes, we can do it. And I don't argue we build 2,000 miles of fence, not all of it. My position is just build it till they stop going around the end. Now, if there's a track around the end, build another mile. I guarantee you there'll be a track around the end of that for a while until they find an easier way. I just looked at this and I thought, you know, we're spending, no one's done these numbers either, by the way, except my diligent and hardworking staff who added up our investment in the 50-mile zone next to the border. And that comes to this, $12 billion spent protecting our southern border. That's $6 million a mile. Now, if Janet Napolitano came to me and said, I'm going to give you a 10-year contract at $6 million a mile for the mile of your house, mile west of my house, Dan, and I'd look at that and say, I've got a $60 million contract. Do I want to hire a lot of people and eventually be paying pension plans and benefit packages and buying Humvees? I want to do some of that. But I would just build the structures that it takes so I could use that boots-on-the-ground resource more effectively, and I'd use the technology more effectively, and yes, I'd use some drones on top of all of that. That's sealing the border. Then, local law enforcement. I'm watching here as this Eric Holder administration and Janet Napolitano administration are trying to tell all of you that you don't have the right, duty, or responsibility to help enforce federal immigration law. What other federal law would you be excluded from enforcing? I can think of none. And I look at the federal case law that's out there. Everything that I put my finger on supports the implicit, the implied authority of local law enforcement to enforce all federal immigration, or all federal laws, including immigration. So when Eric Holder went before the Immigration Committee and he said, and I asked him point blank, you're going to sue Arizona? Well, yeah. And you make up your own mind, I think the president ordered you to do that. He didn't rebut that when I made that charge. And I asked him specifically, where has Arizona's SB 1070 violated the Constitution? Couldn't answer it. What federal statute might have gone as far as the supremacy clause is concerned? Did it surpass? Couldn't answer. What case law would direct this, that you give you a foundation to sue Arizona? Couldn't answer that. So they created this new theory called the, let's say, careful balance theory, which is that somehow Congress has said to the executive branch, ignore your oath to the Constitution and create and establish and maintain this careful balance between all the various immigration laws that are out there, because State Department's got an interest, Homeland Security's got an interest, maybe Justice has an interest. Congress never established a careful balance theory. There's nothing out there in the language, in the legislation, or in the dialogue that says, go enforce these laws at your discretion and not enforce them at your discretion. So Holder has the audacity, and Janet Napolitano included, to do administrative amnesty. They say they don't have the resources to enforce immigration law, so they take 300,000 illegal immigrants who have been adjudicated for deportation and not yet received their final deportation order, and they've got the manpower to pour through every single file and try to find as many as possible that they can say, we're going to give you a pass, stay in America. This is a violation of their oath of office. It is thumbing the nose at the rule of law. It breaks down an essential pillar of American exceptionalism, rule of law. And when I write it, I capitalize it so people know that. And then I'm just going to quickly touch a couple more subject matter. Anchor babies, you know what that is. It's birth tourism. And for $30,000, you can fly from Beijing to San Francisco, have your baby go back to Beijing with a birth certificate and a little footprint on it. And now that's a conduit to bring in 2, 3, or more hundred of your extended family members over a period of time. E-Verify is a good thing. It works, and there's still the rumor out there that it's low efficiency. It's very high efficiency. It's very close to 100%, and you get it to 100% by using it. And then the final thought I want to offer here, second to the final thought, excuse me, the second to the final thought I want to offer here right now is this, that I have this study that it took about 2.5 years to get. Criminal alien statistics, it's dated March of 2011. It's a GAO study. And in it is a lot of data that'll tell you what's going on here with illegal immigration in the country. SCAP funding, the percentages of our federal prisons now I believe is 27% are criminal aliens. There's a number in here also I couldn't find this morning, but it's stuck in my head. 25,017 homicide arrests of criminal aliens. That means a minimum of 25,000, at least I think it does, a minimum of 25,017 dead Americans buried in graves, all scattered across this country, not coming back in flag-draped coffins, not celebrated in a way for their heroism, grieved by their families. And that is a price that we have paid by the thousands that's not been tabulated in this cost of illegal immigration. Last thing is New IDEA. The New IDEA Act brings the IRS into the enforcement process, and I'll be introducing it again in this Congress sometime in the next few weeks. What it does is it says that you're not going to be deducting wages and benefits from your as a business expense. So those paid to illegals go over into the profit side where the IRS then will put taxes, interest, and penalty on that. It turns your $10 an hour illegal into a $16 an hour illegal. It makes the IRS part of the enforcement mechanism, and it says to the employer, you can clean up your act because one day the IRS will show up and help you do it on your own. So you get a lot of good voluntary employer enforcement of cleaning up their workforce. That's kind of a big picture shot at what the sheriffs are looking at here as far as the force of all this is concerned, and we need to support them all for what they do, and they know what's going on locally. Thanks for having this today, and I want to hear as much as I can from the other panelists.